The main reason for this is our local taxable value fell from $39.9 million to $38.1 million. This is the denominator in figuring out the city tax rate. As that denominator gets smaller, your resulting percentage gets bigger. So it looks strange that we only have a 5% tax levy increase, but the tax rate is going up 9.94%. But now the estimated decrease of an average value home in Maplewood is dropping 5%. Median value home in 2010 was $205,400. It's dropping to $195,100. With the 5% proposed tax levy increase and the 5% reduction in a median value home, we're estimating a change in annual property taxes for the city of $29 or $3 per month. Back in 2008, monthly taxes on a median value home was $56. In 2011, with the 5% proposed levy increase, we're estimating it to be $62. That's a $6 increase over 4 years. And I think I only have 2 more slides here. This next slide shows how your annual or monthly property tax, city property tax on a median value home is broken out by department. There's small increases here. So it shows what the 2010 amounts were, annual and monthly, and then the 2011 amounts, annual and monthly. And then the last slide, this kind of puts into perspective how your city property tax relates to possible other household expenses that people may have. On a median value home for 2011, we're estimating $61.66 a month for property taxes. And that's all I had, and I think Mr. All wanted to add some more.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I thought I'd take a little bit time, as I mentioned before, just go through what we've been through and summarize some of the discussions we've had over the last 7 months regarding the budget document and what's in it, literally how the decisions were made. If we can go to the overhead, I've got a list of items that I just want to go through very briefly. Council, you remember this list. You looked at it, debated it in July of this year. Some of it's capital improvements plan, other items. But some of the items that you considered in the budget and had options about reducing costs for the city were reducing the number of police vehicles. You decided in this column, you decided to not reduce the number of police vehicles we had. You looked at reducing the size of the fire department from 2 full-time people down to part-time on 2 positions. Again, you decided not to do that. You had an option to look at the recodification of the city for $16,000 and kept that in the budget. You did have an option to fund open space. You did reduce that expenditure, so that is a cut in the proposed budget. You had an option and known that we were down 4 people in the Public Works Department over the last 3 years. You did decide that instead of cutting a person, you did keep that person in the budget in Public Works and would share that person between parks and streets. The Maplewood Community Center. You did have cuts in that area. You have increased the levy for the Maplewood Community Center to $340,000. Last year, the levy for the Maplewood Community Center was $220,000. So there's an additional $120,000 proposed in this budget going to the Maplewood Community Center. Had you not done that, those would have been additional cuts that would have had to been made in the operational expenses at the Maplewood Community Center. We have a fire truck replacement fund. It's known here. Instead of putting money into that fund for replacing fire trucks, you have delayed the replacement of one of our fire trucks. Chief Lucan talked about that. You identified as one of your top 7 goals in February of the year to get more money into replacement of our aging equipment in our parks. That's a key priority, and unfortunately we had to reduce that from $60,000 to $30,000. And you had a housing replacement program. You did keep $10,000 in that program, although it doesn't really do a lot. We certainly identified hundreds of thousands of needs. It's at least a start in that program. And as well, the commercial property redevelopment program was a $50,000 proposal from staff. You reduced it to $10,000. So you can see there's $120,000 worth of cuts that you reduced in July. The next part of the budget, as we began looking at revenues, was for the city manager to try to look at operational expenses. These are 12 items that the city manager then also reduced out of the budget. As Gail mentioned, the number of the employees in the budget is reduced by 1. So we have less employees proposed in 2011. The cost of living, the raises for employees. Council, you had a number of meetings on this. Later tonight, we will be approving contracts with all 7 bargaining groups for a 0%. No employees will be getting raises or cost of living adjustments to their salaries in 2011. Health care benefits as well. While a majority of the industry is seeing 9 to 10% increases in their health care costs, we are seeing a 4.5% reduction because employees took on more expenses, more risk, and certainly each employee on the program paying now over $600 a year as part of that employee expense. So our employee, all the benefit cost increases are less than $10,000 increased in the overall budget. As we mentioned, Citizen Services has given up a portion of an employee and is now sharing that employee with community development instead of meeting both needs. Our legal department has reduced the judgments balance. That's for lawsuits from $200,000 to $100,000 because the League of Minnesota Cities has reduced our liability coverage. Public Works, where we used to use a number of summer workers for mowing in the parks, helping out in our improvement projects for Mr. Thompson's the street programs, has reduced and eliminated summer workers in that hiring. The police department will have 2 vacant positions. Where we used to have 55 sworn officers through the process during the year, we are planning to keep those positions open for much of the year. So instead of 55 sworn officers, we will only have 53 during the year, and I believe the chief is in the process of filling one of those to get to 53 at this point in time. In addition, there's a reduction in overtime in the police department from this year to next year. The fire department, Chief Lucan will be eliminating the part-time position of the Assistant Emergency Management Director. As we've talked about, community development is taking a full-time administrative staff position, reducing it to a 7/10 time. We have positions of park manager and recreation program assistant. Those that are vacant, they will remain vacant for a number of months in order to continue to save expenses. The finance department is reducing our costs on the audit. We'll be doing that work internally, where in the past we've hired the outside groups. And Mr. Kaneko talked a little bit in early November about a 3-year plan and is proposing to reduce expenses at the MCC another $60,000 over what's already in the budget. Council, in your packet, this slide talks a little bit about an item that's in your budget. There is an allocation in the budget that's a line item for $122,000 worth of contingency. Obviously, contingency being for items of unexpected uses, things that we don't know about that we could happen during the year. I've listed 12 items. I won't go into great detail unless you would ask me to explain further. But obviously, these are options for things that are going to come up during the year where funds may be needed for that contingency. Obviously, I mentioned the filling of those vacant police officer positions. The fire station issues, Chief Lucan talked about that in the ambulance fund. There's going to be an expense with some of those changes. Mr. Folds is here tonight. Our phone system is on its last leg, and at some point in time, I understand Comcast had a problem over the weekend where nobody had internet service. That potential could happen to the city. We have very little, if any, support for our phone system, and we literally could have the phones go down and you could not call in or call out of City Hall because our phone is in that system. So we're at a point where we need to replace the phone system. We currently have a vacancy in the Community Development Director position. Mr. Kaneko has talked about a need. Our pool at the MCC is in need of repairs and an upgrade, and there's certainly a major program that needs to be going there. Mr. Thompson has testified to you about the need for a seal coating program. We've delayed that for nearly 6 years now, and we need to get back to that program to protect that investment. We have the litigation ongoing with wipers, and we're certainly looking at that expense, that we need to continue to fund that. We talked about park equipment replacement, your Economic Development Authority. That's a big priority for you. Again, we need to invest in some of the economic development. Fish Creek is an ongoing discussion that you've had. Pleased to report that we may have a partner that will be coming back in January. We don't know. But again, it's a priority for you as a council, but that money is available. And certainly, we continue on that operating deficit at the MCC. The final item is one that I want to be sure, though, that I put it as 12, but it probably should be at the top. Council, I want you to understand, Gail talked about a $45 million budget. Typically in the tax levy, when we're talking about this contingency, $122,000. With the state issues that we have, the current economy, we have to make estimates for all of 2011 on the amount of expenses, and we work with each of the departments to get a good handle on that. We do the same with revenues. How much money are we going to have coming in? How much taxes are we going to collect? How much are people going to delay and not pay taxes? And so we have a percentage in there, and that can vary. The number that I have listed here is $400,000. Ms. Baumann and I actually sat in her office and debated this item. And I won the argument. Okay? Gail wanted to recommend to you to have a budget $400,000 less than what it is right now. And we put a budget together with this $400,000 in there, assuming that revenue is going to come in. So I guess that means I've got a brighter outlook on life from 2011 than Gail. But the fact is that this budgeting does not get down to a few $1,000s here and there. We, especially on the revenue side and the expenses side, one large storm, one large crime issue where we have a lot of overtime in the police department, one large event where we have to spend money where it's simply an issue where we have to go out, can cost thousands of dollars. And that's what we think that this contingency money should cover. So I want to be sure that we understand that we do our best to try to give you the best estimates based upon the revenues that we're having. We're just getting ready to close the books on 2010. It looks okay, but boy, the way that looks in 11, things are going to have to be rosy, or we potentially will be looking at cuts during 2011 from some of the existing expenses as well. And my last slide is one for you as a council to consider. And it's simply a summary of your options. You are proposing to increase the levy by 5%. As Ms. Baumann talked about, 2 of the 5 is going to debt service to cover some of the expenses that have been missed. Again, our debt service are simply payment of the debt. You as a council have identified a goal to reduce the city's debt by $10 million from $76 million to $66 million over the next 5 years. And so this simply meets the obligations of the expenses that we have. And again, on the debt service side, remember that's again a state obligation in there. All of those dollars that Gail talked about are the state grants. In this case, it's market value homestead credit. We don't get local government aid, but it's the same thing. It's revenue into the general fund. Had we had that money, as Gail mentioned, we literally could have operated the city with a $53,000 increase over 4 years. Instead, we had to raise taxes